Not taking off anytime soon, Singapore and Hong Kong delay their air travel bubble until next year.
Something you can do right away: redeem your tourism vouchers and go on a Singapore holiday from today.
And Lewis Hamilton won't be racing this weekend. He's self-isolating after testing positive for COVID-19. Hello, you're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Olivia Quay.
I'm Harianto Diman. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
The launch of the travel bubble arrangement between Singapore and Hong Kong will be delayed to next year.
The Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore said today that both countries decided to defer the start given the number of local unlinked cases in Hong Kong is still high. The exact start date of the arrangement will be reviewed late this month.
Now, to recap, the first flight was originally planned for November 22nd, but both governments announced the delay just a day before.
Hong Kong is seeing harsher social distancing measures to curb what its health authorities warned could be its worst COVID-19 wave so far. This is the current situation in Hong Kong. Now, from tomorrow, dine-in services in the city will end 2 hours earlier at 10 p.m, with patrons capped at 2 per table. This will last for 2 weeks.
Bars, pubs, saunas, clubs, nightclubs and party rooms will remain closed. Also closed are amusement game centres, leisure venues, museums, cinemas, theme parks, karaoke establishments, mahjong clubs and swimming pools.
Meanwhile, in Singapore, 10 new COVID-19 cases were confirmed today. They included 1 case from a foreign workers' dormitory after 20 straight days of no cases in the dorms.
There is also 1 case in the community. The remaining 8 are imported and were placed on stay-home notice when they arrived here. More details will be released tonight.
In other local news, the first day of the redemption of Singapore Rediscovers vouchers kicked off today without a hitch. While tour and attraction operators were initially worried that a large part of the vouchers' worth would go towards staycations, the ban on pooling vouchers for a single transaction ultimately made the cost prohibitive for some. Meanwhile, those who face difficulties navigating the online sites and are in need of assistance can visit any of the 69 physical counters set up across Singapore.
A National University of Singapore professor was sacked today for alleged sexual misconduct. NUS said Professor Theodore G. Hoff, who's a professor of political science in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, had sexually harassed a student in physical, verbal and written forms. And investigations began after an anonymous complaint was sent to the university in August. A no-contact order was then issued to the professor in September, prohibiting contact with any NUS student. He was later suspended and told to stay off campus during investigations. A committee of inquiry concluded that he had failed to act with propriety, respect and decorum expected of a staff of the university. NUS also made a police report on November 27th after informing the student.
More families in Singapore could face difficulties making their home loan payments in the coming months. In its annual financial stability review, the Monetary Authority of Singapore said that the unsecured credit card charge-off rate, which is a leading indicator for the credit quality of housing loans, crept up in the 3rd quarter. This means more borrowers may have problems servicing their home loans, as those in initial periods of financial distress are likely to miss credit card bill payments first. MAS also found that companies and banks have remained generally resilient despite the COVID-19 pandemic. It cautioned, though, that corporates with highly leveraged positions and smaller firms with weaker cash buffers remain vulnerable.
Food waste is one of the biggest waste streams in Singapore, and 40% is from the commercial and industrial sectors that handle fish, other seafood and vegetables.
In this second installment of a 6-part series on food waste, the Sunday Times, in partnership with DBS Bank, dives into a fish farm.
This Singapore farm buys between 1 million and 1.5 million baby mullets a year. At 20 cents each, the baby fish cost about $300,000 in total for the fish farmer. In 18 months, the mullets mature and are finally ready for the dinner table. At this point, less than half of each fish is usually used. even with very efficient processing. So what happens to the rest of the fish?
We are here at Haisia Seafood, one of the largest seafood processors in Singapore. What happens is we bring our mullet here, they take our fish, they take out the scale, they take out the guts, the gills, and then they take off the meat, leaving the head and the bones. This fillet is just meat, and this is only 40% of the entire fish.
About 3,000 kilograms of mullets processed into fillets daily. Offcuts make up about 60%, which means a whopping 1,800 kilograms of good fish parts could be thrown away. To avoid wastage, the fish farmer sends all the parts to the Soup Spoon's central kitchen, and this is turned into Assam fish chowder.
We are using all the offcuts and the odd parts as well. So basically, bones comes, we make a fish stock, and then what we'll do is that we'll marinate the fish offcuts, and then we'll cook the soup with the Assam. So this is an Assam mullet. It's inspired by Assam fish head curry, and we added quinoa in there to make it more healthy. So during the packing, every part is actually packed separately to ensure that the integrity of the product is intact.
This is the link to the Live More, Waste Less series on the Straits Times website, where you can read more. You know, it's that time of the year again. We have just passed Black Friday, Cyber Monday just yesterday, and of course with Christmas coming, are you finding that you're spending more than you usually would?
Actually, I'm not. I'm generally not someone who spends online. I'll rather go to the shops, to browse through items and then get them.
Okay.
Yeah, what about you?
Yes, I'm actually quite bad with my spending, and I should really curb that.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is, over the past...
I don't think I'm alone, right?
I don't think you're alone, exactly. Because over the past decade, Credit Counselling Singapore has seen more than 10,000 people who'd fallen into financial trouble due to overspending. Now, many of them are still working to pay off their debts, which range from about $50,000 to a few $100,000 each.
Separately, an OCBC bank survey found that close to 30% of credit card holders here pay only the minimum sum. This means they are accumulating more debt every month.
Here to share more on the slippery slope of overspending and how to avoid it is the Sunday Times' Invest editor Tan Wee Boon. Wee Boon, what are the early signs that you're falling into a debt trap that isn't contributed by bad investments, gambling, or even luxury items?
I think the clearest sign that you're in trouble with debt is when you have a credit card debt which you cannot pay off immediately. This is a sign of more trouble to come. So if you fall into this state, you should make the repayment of debt as your number one priority. I think a lot of people don't realize that there are roughly about 30% of credit card holders who actually make the minimum payment every month. This is actually a sign that you are in trouble.
Wee Boon, is overspending a common problem? Are there any particular segments of the population who tend to overspend more than others?
Well, overspending can actually happen to everyone, so long as they have a credit card. The thing about overspending is that you must have a credit line. If you use only cash, you can't overspend when all your money is gone. So I would say that those who overspend are likely to be those who own credit cards, and they have a poor habit of not paying off what they spend every month.
Right. And in what areas or activities do most people overspend? Is it dining or even app subscription? Because nowadays Netflix, Spotify, they're quite popular, right?
Well, actually, when you subscribe to something, you only pay that service once a month. But the three common ways where people overspend tend to be something which is more regular to them. An example would be shopping. They buy things without keeping to a budget. It's not so much of buying expensive or luxurious things, but buying too many things that you may not need, especially when you're spending above your means. Another example would be dining out. It goes without saying that when eating at home can be much cheaper than eating at restaurants. So if you eat out all the time, there's a chance that you may be spending too much on food. And finally, transport. Many people call for the ride these days. Again, if you do the sums, an MRT ride to the city may cost under $2. But if you call for a door-to-door transport service, you may end up spending 10 times or even 20 times more depending where you stay.
So the big question now, Wibun, is how do we avoid overspending? Can you recommend, suggest any good habits or principles to adopt?
Well, it's not a bad thing to have credit cards. I love my credit cards. I charge all my expenses there because the cards give me very good cashback and other rewards. It's like enjoying a perennial discount. But all of us should have this good habit of paying off all your credit card bills. If you have no debt, you win because you get to enjoy the rewards, but minus the pain. More importantly, always stick to a budget. It's good practice to plan your expenses if you tend to be somebody who would like to spend beyond your means. If you work out a fixed budget, you can still spend to reward yourself, but it just means that you may have to cut back on other things. Ultimately, it just means that you have to be more careful, watch your expenses, so that you don't end up in debt, which certainly is not a fun thing to have.
Right, great to hear from you on this topic, Wibun. We've been speaking to Tan Wibun, Invest Editor for the Sunday Times. The link to Wibun's piece on overspending is in the description below if you're watching us on YouTube.
Still on spending and possibly overspending, Cyber Monday is set to become the biggest online shopping day ever for the US, garnering up to $11.4 billion US dollars. This despite nearly 2 months of office since Amazon held its Prime Day sales event in October. While the amount is lower than an earlier estimate of as much as $12.7 billion, it still easily surpasses this year's Black Friday figure of $9 billion, which was the strongest Black Friday online sales result to date.
According to US Vice President Mike Pence, the distribution of a coronavirus vaccine could begin by the 3rd week of December. His announcement signals that US regulators will swiftly approve an emergency authorization for the first shots. A Food and Drug Administration advisory panel is scheduled to discuss the vaccines on December the 10th. Mr. Pence also told governors that they will be the ultimate arbiters of vaccine distribution and will have the final say in their states.
And in sports, 7-time Formula One world champion Lewis Hamilton has tested positive for COVID-19 and will miss this weekend's Sahir Grand Prix. According to Mercedes, he was tested 3 times last week as part of the regular testing program, returning a negative result each time. However, on Monday morning, he woke up with mild symptoms. At the same time, he was informed that a contact prior to his arrival in Bahrain had subsequently tested positive. Hamilton took another test and this returned a positive result. A subsequent retest confirmed the result. He is now isolating in Bahrain and apart from mild symptoms, Mercedes said Hamilton is otherwise fit and well.
Like many of you, Haryanto and I have been struck by the story of 12-year-old Raphael Lee. If you recall, he passed away on November the 13th before he could get his PSLE results.
Raphael was diagnosed with bone cancer when he was in primary 2. He battled for 5 years, undergoing many operations and treatment, including the amputation of his left arm.
Well, his parents allowed the Straits Times into their home to share more.
Usually every time he would lie down on the operating table and the anesthetist will inject the sedation into him. But the current surgery, it was pretty different. Instead of lying on the table, he asked for permission to sit on the operation table and rest on my arms. Rest in my arms, telling me, "Mommy, I do not want to lie down. I want to sit down. I want you to hug me." So that is how he goes into deep sleep. And that was the last time we actually saw him, as in alert, awake. Yeah. This is Raphael's room. I believe this is a typical boy's room with all the mess around. This is his treasure box. It's only this morning that I happens to peep into it. This is what he have. We have Lego. Lego is one of his favorite toy, and red is his favorite color. We have a little drawing that's written the word Pawpaw. He loves Daddy. Papa down here. And Mummy, he didn't draw out, but he gave me a picture instead. Toothpick is actually like, he could be telling me that grandpa is somebody he loved dearly too. To sum up, we have grandpa here, grandma, daddy, mommy, his favorite toy and his favorite food. This morning when I looked into this treasure box, I actually broke down. He actually treasured us so much that all these things are kept into the treasure box.
Raphael's wish was to inspire others with his story. However, he is a boy of few words. So I guess he's passing on, and those people who get to know him, which during the wake, there are many attendees who came, and I'm just surprised that most of them who do not even know and heard about him. And all have been saying that he's very strong and very brave. So to me, I find that perhaps the boy has planned that now he's gone, I should be the one to inspire on his behalf.
Well, we want to wish Mr. and Mrs. William and Winnie Lee all the very best. Thank you so much for sharing Raphael's story. Now, the Straits Times' full interview with them is on straitstimes.com, where you can also find more news and videos.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well by hitting the red button below. Once again, I'm Harianto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.